This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Public speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The chair will call upon public speakers at the appropriate time. Each public speaker is requested to state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Public speakers who wish to speak in person should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Public speakers participating by Zoom who are wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of any written correspondence would like to speak during the meeting, they should raise their hand or submit a public speaker card. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Emily, would you please conduct a roll call?
Member Ash.
Present.
Member Carr.
Present.
Member Esquivel. Here. Member James.
Here.
Member Patel.
Here.
Member Saunders.
Here.
Member Shakaran.
Here.
Member Vedantam.
Here.
Member Wayne.
Here.
Vice Chair Eselsago.
Present.
And Chair Lovejoy.
I am here.
All right, we do have a quorum with members Bankert, Erickson, Miller, and Stark absent, and member Shakaran's on Zoom.
And the next item on the agenda is public comment. Emily, have we received any written public comments?
We do not have any public comments.
And is there anyone wishing to speak during public comment on an item that is not part of the agenda? If so, you can please submit your public speaker card or raise your virtual hand, and the staff or I will call upon you. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, which includes the summary actions from the June 25th, 2025 meeting and acknowledgement of the member attendance log. So are there any changes or comments from the committee? No. Emily, have we received any written public comments?
We have no public comments.
And is there anyone joining virtually? No,
There are no virtual public comments.
So do I have a motion? Thank you, Member Esquivel. I have a first, and do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Emily, can I conduct a roll call vote?
Member Ash.
Abstain.
Member Carr.
Aye.
Member Esquivel. Aye. Member James.
Aye.
Member Patel.
Aye.
Member Saunders.
Aye.
Member Shakaran.
Aye.
Member Vedantam. Member Wayne.
Aye.
Vice Chair Eselsago.
Aye.
Chair Lovejoy.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously with member Ash abstaining and members Banker, Erickson, Miller, and Stark absent.
Thank you, Emily. We will now move to the regular agenda items, of which we have 3. The first item is an informational item that will be introduced by Matt Kelly and presented by Amara Morrison. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair Lovejoy. Matt Kelly, Acting Director of Planning for the Authority. So every so often, we like to remind our committee members, because this is a Brown Act meeting, of the requirements and rules under the Brown Act. And I'm not going to talk about it anymore because it's not my expertise. I'm going to hand it over to Amara Morrison, who is our legal counsel and expert on all things Brown Act for our Brown Act refresher.
Okay, I'm Amara Morrison, and I serve as general counsel to CCTA and its various committees. Okay, thanks, Emily. So, as Matt indicated, I'm going to provide a kind of a quick overview of the Brown Act and some best practices for CCTA's committees, including this particular committee. So, I'll work through the slides here. Sorry. Kind of having to navigate to click on the screen. Okay, all right. Now I know how to drive. All right, so in tonight's session, I'm just going to go over very quickly Brown Act fundamentals, what constitutes a legislative body, what are meetings, public meetings, closed sessions, although closed sessions are generally not going to be applicable to the CAC, notice and agenda and requirements, public participation requirements, and just touch briefly on the Roberts Rules of Orders, and then would like to leave a few moments for question and answer because I think that can sometimes be more productive conversation. So let's see here. Okay. So the Ralph M. Brown Act, which is otherwise known as the kind of the Sunshine Act, applies to all legislative bodies, and really the intent of the Brown Act is to ensure transparency in the public's business, really transparency in the decision-making and deliberation by legislative bodies such as the CCTA and advisory bodies like the CAC, really provide transparency to how decisions are made. And the intent really is for legislative bodies, including recommending bodies or advisory bodies such as yourself, to conduct your business in a way that's open and transparent. And it really allows and is intended to allow public access to and participation in local government decisions. And fundamentally, it really prohibits decision-making in private. And there are a number of ways that those decision-making those private decision-making can occur somewhat inadvertently, and I'll go over that in a moment. So when does the Brown Act apply? Obviously, it applies in the context of a meeting such as tonight, and it's when there is a congregation or a gathering of a majority of the members of a board, a standing board, or any advisory committee to discuss any business that pertains to CCTA. We've just put here the CCTA, the authority board, has 11 voting authority board members. There are standing board committees, each of which are comprised of 5 members. And then CCTA's advisory committees range anywhere from 11 to 24 members. Meetings can include the use of technology, and certainly during COVID, we all became very familiar with how to meet via Zoom and Teams and other such platforms. And so a meeting really can include a majority, anytime a majority of a board or committee members are gathering to discuss an issue. What is prohibited under the Brown Act are what are called serial meetings, and those serial meetings can occur by phone, they can occur by text, and they can also occur by email in addition to occurring in person. The kinds of serial meetings that we need to be careful of are basically fall into a couple of different categories. One is the hub and spoke, which is contact between members before a formal meeting, which can indicate or reveal members' respective views. And so for instance, the chair might have an opinion about a decision or about an item that is coming before the committee and may reach out to individual committee members to say, this is kind of how I'm thinking about this particular issue. That's a hub and spoke kind of contact, which is considered a serial meeting and is prohibited under the Brown Act. Kind of more frequently, at least in my experience, is the daisy chain meeting, which is where one committee member will express an opinion about a particular item that's coming before the committee to committee member B then talks to committee member C, and so on and so forth. And before you know it, you have a majority of the committee which has been informed of kind of thought process, and which may lead to a decision inadvertently. I always try to caution folks on replying all to emails that are on a particular subject before the committee. And I think what a lot of folks don't understand is that texts, even if they are occurring on your private telephones, your private cell phones, are subject to Public Records Act request. And so we try to caution legislative bodies and committee members to refrain from, collectively discussing items via group text. And then we can also run afoul of the Brown Act by inadvertently liking or commenting on issues on social media. So just sort of be aware of that. Even your private, for instance, Facebook account, just would caution you against commenting and discussing issues pertaining to the CAC on your even your private social media accounts. So yeah, and this slide I think just reiterates what I've just cautioned about. So I won't belabor that point. Again, standing board committees and advisory committees, I don't think that I'm going to spend a whole lot of time on this particular slide. I think as it pertains more to the CCTA board, authority board itself. So I will move along on that one. And I would like to spend a little bit of time, more time, I think, than on the other slides about virtual meetings. And again, this is sort of a new concept for many of us, stemming from COVID. So we are certainly allowed to conduct meetings in a hybrid fashion, and the authority board conducts its meetings in a hybrid fashion. This committee is conducting it in a hybrid fashion. Your committee members are allowed to participate virtually via teleconference, but pursuant to the requirements, the public notice requirements under the Brown Act, if you are participating via teleconference, via telephone, or video conference, you are encouraged to leave your camera on. And for purposes of public notice, we strongly encourage you to contact the clerk's office and let them know that you will be participating via phone, because we need to identify on our agenda your physical location. Technically, members of the public have the right to appear at, for instance, your residence and comment on an item that is on the agenda from your teleconferenced location. So I know sometimes emergencies occur and last-minute schedule changes can occur, but we do strongly encourage you to work closely with the clerk's office and let them know that you will be participating via phone. Also, when voting, if you are participating remotely with your camera on, we do encourage that the camera remain on all the time. And if you do encounter some telephonic difficulty, audio difficulties while you're teleconferencing, we would ask that a physical hand gesture of an up or down in order to signal your vote is strongly encouraged. And an email vote is not acceptable under the Brown Act. So hopefully that's clear. I just I'll touch very briefly on closed sessions. Legislative bodies are allowed to conduct certain forms of public business in a closed session. And those generally encompass employment discussions about employment matters, real estate negotiations, litigation, anytime, for instance, the authority board, if it were to acquire property via eminent domain, it would be allowed to discuss property acquisition in closed session. Public safety, which is not necessarily applicable to this agency, and then labor negotiations. And my note indicates that these committees such as yours are generally not authorized to conduct closed sessions except for the authority board's executive committee. But I just did want to touch on that just briefly. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the Brown Act does have pretty stringent requirements on how your meetings are noticed and how items are agendized. And I always like to encourage staff and our clerk's office to make our agenda titles as clear and straightforward as possible, just so that members of the public really understand what's being considered and potentially voted on or recommended at that particular meeting. Agendas have to be posted at a physical location, and we have them posted at the back of the room. And generally, for regular meetings such as this one, it has to be posted 72 hours in advance. There are exceptions to that 72-hour requirement, but I would imagine this body generally won't conduct special meetings. Our administrative code does require all of our meetings to be conducted pursuant to Robert's Rules of Orders. Those questions don't arise a whole lot unless there are tricky motions that are amended or not seconded. But we've cited a couple of common questions that come up, and one is, can committee members vote on, for example, minutes at a meeting, from a meeting at which that particular committee member was not in attendance? And the answer is yes. And I think there was one abstention, and I don't know the reason for the abstention, but if the reason for the abstention was that committee member wasn't present during last committee members or committee meeting, you don't need to abstain. You can vote on approval of the minutes. And then, can members vote if they were not in the room or on camera for the motion? And the answer is here that a member has to be present in the room during the presentation and during the motion in order to vote. And that concludes my portion of the presentation, and I would certainly welcome any questions that the committee might have, any points of clarification.
Okay, so clearly your hub and spoke and your daisy chain, I think you were saying it was a majority. So if I send the chair an email, I assume that that's okay, but how far or how many is it that can be included?
It would be the majority. So if in the daisy chain scenario, if you send to the chair and then the chair sends to, sorry, how many people are on this committee? If you were to forward that email or try to solicit sort of input and consensus building from a majority of this committee, then that would technically be a serial meeting prohibited by the Brown Act.
And so the danger then is not the one-on-one, but the thing getting copied to other people and
Getting
creating-
copied, getting forwarded, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Amra, for your presentation. Do I have any other comments or questions from the committee?
Just two general questions. Can you join a meeting remotely from, let's say, like Russia?
You have to join remotely from within CCTA's jurisdictional boundaries. So in order to teleconference, well,
Nevada?
actually, I take that back. You are able to participate remotely from, from another country. It just has to be posted on the agenda. And technically, I guess if some member of the public wanted to join you, you know,
In Russia?
in Russia, they would technically be able to participate.
Okay, so there's no limit on location?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just, it's really important to, if you are teleconferencing in, it's really important that you remain in that location. I know I've monitored meetings where folks are in their car and they're participating in the meeting from the car, and obviously, members of the public aren't able to access your personal vehicle.
Oh, I like to go for walks, so, okay, no walking.
No?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, you'll have to get your exercise in another time of day.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I believe Senate Bill 707 is discussing a mandate regarding translating agendas in counties with greater than 20%. Can you maybe touch on that?
I am not entirely familiar with all of the requirements of 707 relative to language translation, but if this is something that is of interest to the committee, I would be happy to, through Emily, provide a summary of what that bill. We are tracking the bill. Yeah, so, yeah, either through Matt or through Emily, be happy to provide a summary of that.
Okay, thank you. One last question.
Too.
Regarding, like, let's say, subcommittee research, does a subcommittee have to follow the Brown Act?
It depends on how large your subcommittee is and whether it is formulated for just a very specific purpose and for a limited duration. So limited duration, kind of one-off topics generally are not subject to the Brown Act, and as long as it doesn't include a majority. So I would encourage this body, if it is considering formulating an ad hoc committee to research a particular issue, that you coordinate with Emily and with Terry Ann to determine whether you'd be subject to the Brown Act.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Member Vedanta.
Thank you. Just a quick clarification. So let's say if the committee has 11 members and if 4 form a group of text messages and does not discuss anything what happens part of the agenda, that's acceptable since it's not majority?
I would really encourage you to not engage in text messages about really any CCTA business. I just think you're safer, even if it's less than a majority. I just think it's safer to conduct your business in public. That's really the whole intent of the Brown Act, is just you're conducting the public's business in public, where the public can listen in and comment.
Okay, thank you.
Because that helps with your deliberative process. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great, thanks. What about social media accounts has come up, and I know the state has been looking at laws like people's X feeds or Instagram accounts when they post messages and public records acts. Just kind of curious, what is the latest regarding that for elected officials or committee members?
Yeah, just be really careful. I mean, I just, I think even in your personal accounts, if a Public Records Act request were made for an issue that is before the committee, arguably, the Public Records Act request could be broad enough to include your personal social media accounts as well. And, you know, if the Public Records Act request were tailored appropriately, it could presumably retrieve or obligate the agency to produce that information. So.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, so we don't have any public comments written. Anybody join virtually during the meeting?
We
Emily?
do not, yeah, we do not have any public comments, written or virtual.
Okay. So in that case, we'll move on to the next item, which is an action item introduced by Matt Kelly and presented by Robert Sarmiento. And I just also want to thank Amara once again for your presentation.
Yeah, she's got to hit all of our committees, so she's on the grand tour. Tonight, we only have one checklist. I don't know if that's better than two, but only one tonight, but it's from a large entity, the county, Contra Costa County. As you know, we have the 19 cities and towns come in to present their checklist, but we, also have the county who actually has the highest population in their jurisdiction of any of our local jurisdictions. So it technically is the largest city in the county. But as you know, it's spread over a much larger area than most of our cities. So that being said, I'm just going to introduce Robert and let him go. This is Robert Sarmiento is a planner with Contra Costa County, and he's going to present the calendar year 22-23 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. Robert?
Check. Oh, thank you. And just double check with, just hit right. Oh, okay. So as Matt said, my name is Robert Sarmiento. I'm a planner in the transportation planning section of the Contra Costa County Department of Conservation and Development. And I'm here to present the county's checklist tonight. So to the next slide here. So next I'm going to talk about the action plan. The county is subject to action plan policies from all five action plans, just because there's unincorporated communities, through within all I guess SWAT, WCTAC, Transplant, and Transpac. And what included in the slide here is is examples of action plan policies in the action plans and actions that the county has taken to respond to these policies. As you can see, for WCTAC, Transpac, and SWAT TVTC, the county conducted actions that supported active transportation in Contra Costa County. In regards to Transplant, the county took actions to support transit, and specifically in this case, potential ferry service in East County. And then for SWAT La Miranda area, the county took action to support accessible transportation, which is one of the focuses of CCTA. All right, I'll move on to the next slide here. Next is just a list or a table listing all the general plan amendments that the county undertook within the reporting period. I just have a brief summary of each of the five general plan amendments. Bayview Estates was a GPA that changed the general plan designation from heavy industrial to residential. This was for a single-family subdivision. The Abassi general plan amendment was to change the land use designation from public use to residential. The Classic Boat Works, and actually I should take a step back here. The Bayview Estates was in the Pacheco area. Abassi was in the Rodeo area. The Classic Boat Works in Discovery Bay was to change the designation from public general plan land use to commercial. This is for a boat repair service. Then the Speaker Continuing Care Community Project, which was unincorporated Walnut Creek, was to convert single-family housing to congregate care. This project is like a senior living and assisted living facility. And then finally, there's the Byron Airport Development Program. This was a county's transportation element amendment to update the permitted uses and activities at Byron Airport in support of a new development program. As you can see in the table, several of these general plan amendments did not require an RTPC review, but there were two that did go through RTPC review, but no comments were received. And then next slide is the Development Mitigation Program. The county participates in the regional transportation mitigation programs for each of the RTPCs. So that includes in West County their STIMP program. In East County, it's their ECRIFA program. And then in the Tri-Valley area of SWAT, it's the TVTDF program. In addition to those regional transportation mitigation programs, the county also administers 15 local area of benefit programs that fund transportation mitigation mitigations within the unincorporated county. So you could see it as like a smaller, kind of similar to a regional transportation mitigation program, but just at a smaller scale within a community. So, like for example, as shown in the slides here, like North Richmond has their own transportation mitigation program, the North Richmond AOB, Pacheco, Bay Point, et cetera. All right, next, housing options. The county has an adopted housing element from 2015 to 2023, so it was compliant during the reporting period. I do want to note that the county did have a new housing elements adopted by the County Board of Supervisors in December 2023 and certified by the state's Housing and Community Development in early 2024. And as seen in the checklist, the county's checklist, they did submit an annual progress report to the state for years 2022 and 2023. And finally, this is one of the questions in the checklist. The county has adopted a complete streets policy back in July 2016 to be, in this particular case, this complete streets policy was adopted to be consistent with MTC requirements. All right, next, briefly talk about traffic impact studies. There was one traffic impact study that was conducted in the reporting period that had over 100 peak hour trips. It was the Orbisonia Village Mixed Use Project. This is a mixed use project that includes 100% affordable housing, a library and other and retail uses at a project site that's located adjacent to the Pittsburgh Bay Point BART station. And then next is the 5-year capital improvement program and transportation systems management program. The county, it adopts what's called its Capital Road Improvement and Preservation Program, or CRIP, every 2 years. So during the reporting period, the county adopted the CRIP in November 2022. And just additional information, I mentioned it's adopted every 2 years, so the county most recently adopted its most recent CRIP in 2024. So the expectation is a new one would be adopted in 2026. And then next, the county adopted a transportation system management ordinance in January 2003. All right, next is the urban limit line. So the county adopted, or I guess it adopted a voter-approved urban limit line in 1990, and through the adoption of Measure L in 2006, extended the time frame for that urban limit line. So with Measure L, the county will supports the urban limit line through December 2026. During the reporting period, the county did not modify the urban limit line, approve any major subdivisions outside the urban limit line, or adopted any general plan amendments to establish an urban use outside the limit line. And then next is the growth management element. So the county, actually currently the county, they adopted their latest the current general plan, the 2045 general plan last year, which includes a growth management element that's consistent with the CCTA model growth management element language. But for the reporting period, during the reporting period, that was the county's previous general plan was in place during that time. So that previous growth management element in that general plan included what's called the Measure J model growth management element correspondence table, and that was included to ensure that the county's growth management element was consistent with CCTA's model growth management element. And finally, just talk about local streets and road maintenance. So you see several figures up there on the screen. Just want to provide a brief summary of a couple of columns there. So the local streets and roads column for 2022, a little more than $2 million spent that went towards a lot of road repair projects that were a result of like storm damage in the prior years. While in 2023, about the same amount, a little over $2 million, went towards a lot of countywide maintenance projects. And then just to focus on the growth management planning and compliance column there, both in 2022 and 2023, those funds were spent for RTPC dues, growth management element management, and other planning activities related to Measure J and the growth management element. So that concludes my presentation on the county's checklist, and I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for your presentation, Robert. We'll start with Member Ash.
Thanks. Was there ever a period of time where you were out of compliance temporarily on the housing element? And was there any builder's remedies, or no, you stayed in?
When you say out of compliance with CCTA, or out of compliance with?
Out of compliance with the state housing for HCD. Because your timeline was December and then approved by the county, but then not approved for the state for a little while.
Okay, that I don't know off the top of my head. I just don't want to I want to make sure I give you the correct information. So if it's okay with you, Matt, if I could follow up with an email, and then I could send it to the group just to.
And then, so the county's unique, right? It has different pockets all over the place, and you intertwine with cities. So one of my favorite questions to ask is, how do you work on routes of regional significance with all of these cities, right? So you talk about like the housing development in Bay Point. Well, that impacts all of Ignacio Valley Road, right? Which includes Pittsburgh, Bay Point, or Bay Point's the unincorporated, Clayton, Concord, Walnut Creek, right? How do you work? Because housing additions in Bay Point impact traffic in Walnut Creek on that road, right? Or Ignacio, Kirker Pass. So just wondering how you look at that from that housing and routes of regional significance and coordination.
A good question. That's part of the notification requirements that you notify the neighboring jurisdictions. We notify the RTPC, the RTPC, and as well the RTPC notifies the the jurisdictions within the RTPC. But we also, the county has a history of coordinating and working with our partner cities. So for the this Orbisonia Village project, both for in the development of the project, and also just finding funding to build a lot of the transportation improvements potential transportation improvements that be associated with this project. We've coordinated with Pittsburgh and even other like the transit agencies like BART, Tri-Delta Transit. So the county is aware that whenever we have these bigger projects, to reach out to our neighboring jurisdictions, the transit agencies, and all other external partners and stakeholders.
Okay, awesome. And then Matt, do we have somebody from the county on the committee? Because I'm going to ask that question.
Maybe the chair.
You are the official. Okay, well, great for fulfilling that spot. So thank you. A lot of our cities have vacancies.
Yes. Yeah, I'm curious. how to put this, prioritize the paving. I know that since the county's so large compared to like the cities, and I'm sure you got a lot of pressure, you got the East Bay Park system, you got all the different cities. How do you, and when it comes to the street repairs and paving, how do you prioritize that? What kind of, do you have?
That's a good question, and let me think if because unfortunately, I'm not in the, I'm not in the, I guess, want to say division or department that, handles paving, so give me 1 second here to think if I have the answer to that, because I don't want to give you wrong information. So, yeah, I think, as a member Wayne, yeah, I probably would have to get back to you on that as well, in addition to the other question, just because I'm in, as I mentioned, I'm in transportation planning, and road maintenance gets overseen by our Public Works maintenance division. So I don't know specifically how, how they prioritize or their process for, maintaining or repairing the roadways throughout the county, like how their prioritization works. So I'd have to get back to you on that one.
And how do you, for like bike lanes and stuff, how do you work with the cities and I know the East Bay Park system, is there, how does that come along to prioritize where bike lanes go? Because you have to like work with the cities, obviously, because a lot of the county roads go, you got a county road, it goes right into a city road.
Yeah, so the county, we have our own, as I mentioned earlier, what's called our Capital Road Improvement and Preservation Program. We have like a project list. We also, within the reporting period, actually adopted an active transportation plan, which identifies future bicycle and pedestrian improvements throughout the unincorporated county. So the county, we actually look at those documents and other documents to determine potential locations for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. And given that, as you all are aware of, the unincorporated county, borders, several, all the cities. Whenever there's an opportunity, the county, and we're going to move forward with a bicycle or pedestrian planning effort or a project, we always reach out to our neighboring jurisdictions to see if there are opportunities to coordinate on studying a roadway corridor or building out a bike ped project. And I would mention this as well, that when it comes to undertaking studies and building projects, that takes funding, and that requires applying for funds, whether it's from CCTA or the state or the federal government. And typically those the grant administrators who are distributing the funds, they look favorably upon projects and planning efforts that have coordination or multi-jurisdictional efforts. So that's, with that in mind, that's why the county, whenever these opportunities come up, we always try to partner with our the cities on these efforts. I would mention one example. The county, we just received a planning grant from MTC for bike ped improvements on San Pablo Avenue. And what's notable about this grant award, or this proposal from the county, is we're actually partnering with PNOL. We partnered with PNOL on this planning effort. So this study looks at bike ped improvements on San Pablo Avenue from Richmond Parkway, which is part of Tara Hills, and other unincorporated communities in that area, through the city of Pittsburgh all the way to Hercules. So yeah, this was a grant where, MTC, they look favorably on multi-jurisdictional collaboration, and that's where the county, we reached out to PNOL, and we're fortunate that PNOL was supportive of a joint application, and ultimately both the county and PNOL, we were successful in getting funds to conduct this study.
All right, thank you.
Hi. So I was interested in your last slide, your sort of fund balance went from 1.8 million to 7.5 down to 5.3. I'm interested in kind of what the typical level is, because those are some pretty big swings. It sounded like you're using most of the money for storm damage and things, which I would see how when you get out of the cities, they could be bigger with slides and stuff. So just what's that general level that you try to do? And is it going to other things than, damaged, roads and stuff?
What I've seen in typically over the last few years, a lot of our funding, this LSM funding goes to local streets and roads, that category, which includes typically includes maintenance. I think that's what the focus is with county when it comes to utilization of the local streets and road maintenance, just maintaining our roadway, especially just because the county has so much roadway within its jurisdiction. So that's typically what the focus is of our of the use of LSM funds. There's usually just a little bit left that we use for, as I mentioned, the growth management, planning, and compliance. I do know that the LSM forms, they have other categories like transit operations, things like that. Yeah, we usually don't, we don't apply our funds to those categories. It's really just, roadway maintenance. If there's other projects, actually, I do have a list here. Let me see if I can bring it up, or I could read it off for you here. Yeah, it's just typically it's maintenance projects, sometimes safety improvements. That's really what the focus of our use of our local streets
are. Are those levels? I mean, that's typical. It's swinging that much.
Yeah, it fluctuates. Because our projects are not always constant. There may be there may be years where we have more projects versus fewer roadway projects, so that dollar amount fluctuates.
Okay. And then the other thing I was interested in, I think this is the first presentation I've seen from the county versus all the city ones, and it was just interesting, both in your presentation and looking at the numbers, like how you deal with all the different, groups. And I'm just interested in, what challenges or whatnot that you have as the county, either dealing with CCTA or the cities, and it just seems like there's so much paperwork more you guys are doing than just, somebody else. I'm just interested in how difficult it is.
And I just want to clarify one question. You said groups. You mean like
well,
both?
Like I can't remember the SWAT and
oh yeah,
there's just so many pieces you're dealing with, within the county.
And I think it may be unique among the jurisdictions in Contra Costa County here that county staff, we have more than just one. There's more than just me. There's I have 3 to 4 or 2 to 3 colleagues, and and that's the thing. There's more areas to cover. Yeah, we have to attend 4 different. We have to participate in 4 RTPCs. We do seem like in my experience, at least compared to the cities, we do coordinate a lot more with CCTA. Just given how the size of the county, I have noticed over the years that cities, they rely on the county just given its size. Like, when they want to move projects forward, if there's an issue that needs to be discussed, the county gets approached more than other jurisdictions in Contra Costa County. And I think it helps, at least for my job, to just have to go to several meetings. I think Matt's aware of this. Going to all these different RTPCs, we hear the same presentations, or we get to know what's going on in the different sub-regions in the county. So for me at least, it's helpful just getting understanding of getting at least a flavor of the different sub-regions, knowing what their concerns and challenges and what kind of directions each of the sub-regions want. I guess I'll give an example. In the prior years, we've had expenditure plans, in the hopes of a sales tax measure, for the voters, and, during the expenditure plan development process, the county, we go to all the RTBCs, so you get to understand, like, okay, this is what, West County, what their needs are in West County, and we see how that, differs from what East County wants. But just having that knowledge, helps us understand, like, okay, how do we, make this countywide sales tax measure work, given the different, needs and philosophies in the different subregions.
Well, it was just interesting that it seemed way more complex and way more expensive looking at the numbers. So it was interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a few questions. First one is, how is the reasonable progress in housing defined or measured for jurisdictions with significant ADU growth, but few multifamily units?
Okay, and I asked if you could repeat that one more time.
Yeah, how do you all like measure or define, like jurisdictions with like more ADU growth, but few multifamily units? I think in the report, there's like, I don't want to say an explosion of ADU growth, but there's quite a bit versus multifamily units. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to figure out how you all define reasonable progress in that kind of scenario.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, that one, yeah, unfortunately, I'm not in the I'm not in the housing section, so I don't want to, I'm not that, familiar with how they track, ADU versus multifamily growth. So yeah, that one I'd have to defer, and again, I could reach out to my housing colleagues and get back to you on that one.
Sure. Thanks. Regarding the 5-year capital improvement program,
mm-hmm.
Have you all kind of updated it to reflect, changing regional funding opportunities or cost escalations?
Yes. So as I mentioned, we update that, what's called our CRIP, every 2 years, and one of the components of the CRIP is identifying, funding opportunities. So that, funding opportunities change all the time. I think we're all aware of, especially say with the federal government, that how funding has changed with that. So that, gets updated within the CRIP. And then you had a second part of that question. I just want to make sure I answer.
I think I think you answered it, because if you're updating the CRIP every 2 years, that kind of incorporates the cost escalation.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, last question. Mm-hmm. So pre and post COVID, mm-hmm. how has that been updated, or how are you all kind of measuring that?
And when you, I just want to clarify when you say that.
In terms of like the general plan amendments.
Okay.
Traffic patterns for pre-COVID versus post-COVID. Have you all like updated it to reflect? Have you noticed if there's like less traffic post-COVID, or is it getting up to the level it was pre-COVID? And have you updated the plan to include that kind of variation?
I think when it comes to trip generation and congestion, as you described, typically I think the county, because we don't real time or actively track the differences in the changes in congestion and things like that. At least for me, my experience, I kind of relied on CCTA, like because CCTA tracks it in more regularly than the county does. I would say the other big thing as well that's taking place, and it's not even COVID related, but just given the same time period, is SB 743 with a switch over to VMT. So in the county, when we conduct transportation analyses, there's a greater focus on vehicle miles traveled and less so on congestion-based metrics. So, and then moving forward, yeah, the county, I think I could say for other jurisdictions as well, there's just a more greater emphasis on vehicle miles traveled.
And I'll just note that Robert's right. CCTA has kind of been designated the transportation planning agency for the county, so it would be on us to be tracking those post-COVID numbers, and that's a whole nother presentation for you guys, which is actually on our list of things to present. But I would say in general, we have seen traffic come back, just not in the same patterns. Temporally, it's different. The types of trips are different, but traffic and congestion are definitely back to pre-pandemic levels.
Okay, I'm going to save my questions for last. Member Carr?
Thanks again, Robert. Good, you're still on that slide. What I'm struggling to wrap my head around, it looks like your expenditures are pretty ratable, so kind of probing where Member Saunders probed. What I'm confused about is your funds received are nowhere near ratable. Did you get 2 years' worth of funding in 1 year and some residual the next? Because I've never seen such a lumpy receipt of funds across 2 years like that. So just curious.
Okay, good question. I have a feeling it's probably just based on the timing of when the county, received or processed the funds. Because I can imagine you might have received a check from CCTA, say June 30th or July 1st, so that gets included in the June 30th, 2022. But when the county processes it, it's processed in, or actually, maybe June's not correct because it's calendar year. I would say December 31st that the county received the check, but it gets included in the 2023 year. So that's why it looks a lot bigger in the 2023 year, just based on the timing of when the county deposits the paycheck. So yeah, typically though, we don't. The funding we receive from CCTA doesn't fluctuate that much. I just assume it's based on the schedule.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just say, it all depends on when the checklist gets approved by this body and our board as to when the check gets cut to the county. And so sometimes it's not always done the same time each year because each jurisdiction can submit whenever they want within checklist season. So a lot of the times they will end up getting a check from a previous checklist cycle, and a check from a new checklist cycle within the same calendar year. So that's probably what happened then.
And I recall this. Just I remember the last checklist. It went to the CAC and the board, like CAC in June 2023, and probably the board in the CCTA board in July. So I can imagine that's right at the cutoff for the fiscal year. So there could have been like a timing issue.
I did pull up my list of LSM funds received since 2010 and expended, and it does look like the county on average has spent about 93% each year of what's come in. On average, that's over, like 13 fiscal years. So it definitely fluctuates from year to year, but overall, it looks like they spend the majority of their funds annually.
Thanks. Just one other question. You spoke about the housing element being approved. The county's vast. Do you try to spread that growth out somewhat ratably across the county, or do you lump it all in East County or West County? Is there a strategy around that? And maybe I'll go ahead and ask the follow-up question in case it's easier to tackle them both. What, if any, annexation takes place in the county these days? And do you do any sort of coordination of potential annexation if you're doing something that's under county jurisdiction and Antioch may ultimately be annexing that? How does that all work vis-a-vis the sort of topics we're working on here?
Okay, I could answer the first question because I do recall when it came to the development of the housing element in the general plan that there was support for spreading out the new development throughout the unincorporated county. So yeah, we didn't, I think the county didn't want to see, let's just focus, all the growth in this one area where, so I know the planners are involved with this, the general plan housing element, they worked on ensuring that, every unincorporated community had, I would say, its fair share of new housing. And I would say for some areas it was more challenging than others in terms of, new growth. I think there was still some of that mentality with, let's do how we've always done it, like focus the new growth in this one community because we don't want it in our community. But I know the county, at least with this latest general plan housing element, they strive to, incorporate new housing, as evenly as possible, evenly distributed amongst the unincorporated communities throughout the county. But to answer your second question, annexations, that one not aware of, or cannot answer your questions about annexation. So I think that's another one I'll have to punt and get back to you on.
From our perspective, because when there's anything that's over 30 acres, adding more than 30 acres to any jurisdiction, that has to come in front of CCTA. And I don't recall anything from the county in quite a while on that.
We have not, haven't done, I guess that's the urban limit line, and we haven't, the county has not had any, had any requests or anything like that to expand more than 30 acres outside the urban limit line.
Okay, I guess the only thought that would occur is if you're spread out, if there is an opportunity within the current constraints of urban limit for a jurisdiction to more efficiently serve something that's at a county level. I mean, that's what, in the past, that's what annexation used to be, is you would take those areas and incorporate them into a city or town that could more efficiently serve versus the very diverse footprint that you have. So maybe this whole process to form an urban limit line has sort of frozen annexation. I don't know. It's just trying to wrap my head around if there's anything there or if annexation is maybe a topic of the past that's not even relevant today or what.
It's actually something that's been on our list of future agenda items to have Luann Tahara from LAFCO come in, because they're the county's agency that deals with those types of issues, and if she's still around, she'd probably know better than anybody. So that is someone I've been trying to get in for had on my list for a while. So if it's still of interest.
Yeah, I would add that, because you mentioned LAFCO, and see, that's the county entity that deals with annexation. So I would, questions related to annexation, that's who I would defer to, or to even respond to your question, I would, reach out to LAFCO and then, can answer your question.
That's all. Thanks. I won't say ha-ha for LAFCO.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I look forward to closing the loop on the bike. And thank you for your time. On the bike circuit, the Contra Costa Bike Circuit. Thank you. Do you have any plans to spend the $5 million? Like, is there a list of projects that you're prioritizing?
When you say the $5 million, I guess you're referring to this, the LSM.
It's been 3 years, so I'm assuming you did spend some of that.
Yeah, I'd have to double check with my public works colleagues, because they're the department that receives the funds and applies them to projects and maintenance efforts. But the county, as Matt stated earlier, the county, we try to spend as much as we can of our local street LSM dollars. Given the size of the county, we have lots of roadways to maintain, and transportation projects to spend money on. So yeah, we definitely utilize our LSM funds.
How often are the roads repaved in the county roads repaved?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the question that was asked before about maintenance. I don't know the exact, the cycle or the time frame. So I could reach out to the county's maintenance division and then, respond to your question.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was a priority. And the reason I say that is because I think I drove on Pinole Valley Road from the west side of Contra Costa to come to this meeting, and I just remember there were a lot of potholes. And when I see 5 million, kind of wish we could, from my point of view, it's nicer if you don't have any money, but it'd be nice if we had paved streets. So
and I could include that specific, roadway, Pinole Valley Road, and see where that where that lies in the priority list, and then get back to you on that.
Thank you. I think that's it. Thank you very much, and go bike lanes. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a quick question. Thank you for the presentation. Is there a place to visit to see how these funds have been spent for each city? Like, for suppose any of these funds have been utilized for City of Brentwood, or where can I find that information?
Okay, so this LSM funding, it's only utilized in the unincorporated county, so it wouldn't be
For any city?
Yeah, it's not for any city, because each of the individual cities get their own, LSM funds, return to source funds. So yeah, none of this would go to, none of the funds would be going to Brentwood.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I see that Member Shakiran is joining us virtually. Does Member Shakiran have any questions or comments?
I do not have a question, however, just a point of clarification. One of the committee members raised the question of how do you decide when to pave or repave roads, or how jurisdiction decide. There is a factor, or there's a parameter called PCI. So most cities look at the PCI, which is the pavement condition index, and it goes from 0 to 100. So the higher you are, the better. And usually if your number falls within 80, that means the road really has to get repaved. So I just wanted to make that clarified, that there is a measure, there is something that most cities abide by, PCI. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was really informative.
All right, and thank you for the tidbit about PCI.
And then I saw that Member Erickson joined us virtually. Does Member Erickson have any questions or comments?
I do have a couple of questions. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My question is the movement towards active transportation and complete streets that you said you're implementing. I'm curious if you are, as you're repaving or doing your maintenance, are any of these including and making those repavement projects? Are there any of this funding going to making sure that that you can support active transit? Or are you only doing that through grants? And then my kind of follow-up on that is, what are your plans kind of as the state has changed the safe bike laws? So I know that a lot of the county roads happen to be very high speed and you tend to not have dedicated bike paths, but the speed limit is only supposed to be a maximum of 35. So I think like San Pablo Dam Road, for example, which is 50. So do you guys have plans moving forward, and would you look at dedicating some of your LSM funds to actually maintaining the existing bike lanes that you may have? Because I've also seen that a lot of times the repavement projects only cover the roads and they don't cover like the bike path or the bike shoulder. So if you can address some of sort of the active transport and your plans for as you're rebuilding and how you're going to comply with making it safer under the state law, for us to bicyclists to be safe out on the county roads, because they're inherently really dangerous.
Okay, thanks for those questions. So I think there's two parts to this question, so I'll try to answer each one separately. So the first one, you were saying, when there's a repaving project, is there, opportunity to add or maintain bike facilities when repaving the roadway? And as I mentioned earlier, we have the county adopted an active transportation plan in 2022, which identifies, the county roadways, roadways in the county that would have, existing or proposed bike facilities. So with that information, when the county's maintenance division goes out and repaves the road, want to make sure we coordinate. We meaning like other public works staff, planning staff. We coordinate with the maintenance division to ensure when they repave the road to ensure that they maintain the bike facility or reserve right away for a future bike facility consistent with our active transportation plan. So that's the first part of the question, and then you had the second one. I just want to make sure if you could repeat it one more time, just so I make sure I respond.
So part of the, I'm afraid I can't remember the state statute that passed, but it basically said that if you have class 1, like shared bike lanes, the maximum speed can be only 35 miles an hour. So I'm curious as to because most of the county roads that I'm familiar with happen to be high, like the speed limit is like 50 much more commonly, and there aren't dedicated bike paths with those. So I'm curious what plans you have with kind of complying with lowering the speed limits to make it safer for bicyclists.
Okay, so the county, in addition, I mentioned in 2022, the county adopted an active transportation plan. In addition to that, and it kind of works in concert with an active transportation plan, the county also adopted a Vision Zero document. And the main purpose of Vision Zero is to eliminate fatal and severe injuries on our roadways. So the county is they adopted that plan in 2022, and the county continues to collaborate with planning, public works staff, Contra Costa Health, and then law enforcement to implement the recommendations of that plan, which includes physical improvements to our roadways, potentials, speed reductions, and enforcement and education. So, the county, we have that on in that Vision Zero plan. We identified what's called the high injury network, which shows where there's been a high number of fatalities or severe injuries, and we focus on making those roadways safer, utilizing, what I just mentioned, engineering improvements, including, speed reduction and enforcement, education, things like that. So, the county is definitely moving forward with, with implementing, several strategies to reduce fatalities on our roadways. And that works in concert with our active transportation plan, which identifies several roadways for bicycle improvements, especially class 1 trails or class 4 separated bicycle facilities. I mentioned the county recently was awarded grant money for a bike ped project on San Pablo Avenue. That study is going to look at protected bicycle facilities along San Pablo Avenue, which is, a high speed, high volume roadway where, like a class 2, just a bike lane a regular bike lane would not be appropriate for that kind of roadway. You need something more enhanced, to make bicyclists feel safer biking down that roadway.
Yeah, I just have one follow-up thing, if that's okay. So
Yeah.
with this, are you really expecting to see, like, will there be noticeable changes, say, like within the next 20 years? Or is this like not in my lifetime?
Changes, I just want to, it is clarify
Like
changes.
to make it, all I try to do is bicycle,
Okay.
right? I try not to drive.
Mhm.
And I think it's like, I look at those, I look at all the funding that's done and basically, you know, county-wise, hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on roads.
Mhm.
And, you know, looking at, you probably couldn't identify $100,000 that you spent on maintaining bicycle facilities. And it does bother me that, you know, in this climate crisis and just that I'm basically, to be safe, I am forced to drive a car.
Mhm.
And I just want to know that, is there any, and there's been a lot of talk, and, you know, the state is passing all these laws and has for years to try to make it safer for active transportation and bicyclists, and nothing, it gets planned, but it doesn't really get implemented. So my question is, do you think there's any change that's going to occur that I could see, that I could bike more safely in Contra Costa County, that I can just bike safely to get to the places that I want to go, combination of BART, you know, public transit and bicycling for last mile opportunities? Or will I be forced to drive to be safe?
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I just want to mention, or I don't know, Matt, if you want.
I'll let you speak, but I think the next item is really, I mean, Robert's speaking for the roads that the county maintains. I think CCTA has a countywide vision for what you're speaking to, and so I don't want to put Robert on the spot for things that he's not responsible for. So why don't you speak to county roads, and then in our next presentation, we'll talk about kind of a countywide vision for how we make the facilities safer.
Yeah, so community member Erickson, I think it's, yeah, I think a part of, you know, your vision for, you know, what your hope is in 20 years, which I hope for as well, because I bike as well, is, you know, the county, as I mentioned, we've adopted an active transportation plan and a Vision Zero plan, you know, to encourage, you know, biking and walking in the county. And actually, this is where it kind of connects all several of the dots here. You know, as Matt said, you know, the CCTA is in the process of developing a countywide transportation plan. And what I've heard and seen so far about that countywide transportation plan, there is a lot greater emphasis on active transportation and along with transit as well. So, and also with that, that's also, you know, going back to what we were saying with multi-jurisdictional collaboration with the cities, you know, because that's important as well, because as you're aware, you know, active transportation can't just end, you know, where the county's jurisdiction ends, like, all right, that's where it should end. We should have a, you know, interconnected network. So I think that could only happen if, you know, there's collaboration, coordination, you know, among the county, the cities, and CCTA. And, you know, CCTA has, you know, if I think you're aware of it, the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So that's a good venue where, you know, members from the different cities, the county, and along with citizens, you know, that's where we collaborate on, you know, greater support for bicycling and walking in the county. So hopefully, you know, given all this coordination and also, you know, greater amounts of funding from CCTA and the state, and hopefully with the federal government, you know, there is a greater emphasis on active transportation. So, you know, combine all those together, the hope is, you know, that there's be more opportunities to bike and walk in 20 years. That's what I'm hoping for as well. Like as she said, I bike as well, and it'd be nice to be able to bike around Contra Costa County more.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for your presentation. I am the member that is representing the county And I live in El Sobrante, so a lot of my questions will be focused on that West County area. My first question is really relating to storm damage, and I believe that happened during that fiscal year 2023. We had some major rain. There were quite a few kind of sinkholes and, road problems, specifically like San Pablo Dam Road at Valley View. There's the road that Member Esquivel traveled, may have been Alhambra Valley, probably Panola Valley Road too, Wildcat Canyon. Can you speak to, whether that is like FEMA money or where you are in the process of fixing those roads?
Okay, I would say it's it's a combination of fund sources. I think FEMA would potentially be one source, and also as I mentioned in the presentation earlier, with a use of LSM. That's as much information as I give you, because when it with those projects, I'm not directly involved. So that's another question. Another question I'd have to reach out to my public works colleagues who are more directly involved with those roadway repair projects, and then we'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you. I'd appreciate that. Secondly, I want to focus on San Pablo Dam Road. There's so many really issues around San Pablo Dam Road. First of all, so there's about 9 schools connecting San Pablo Dam from El Sobrante all the way through where it changes over to Camino Pablo and all the way into Moraga. And these roads get incredibly backed up with school traffic. And I'm wondering how the county works with those different school districts, those 3 different school districts along that road to improve the school traffic situation.
Okay, I know, and I know this was brought up earlier, and my apologies for not mentioning this, because there was questions about roadway safety and in San Pablo Dam Road. So the county is currently working on implementing bike ped improvements and other safety improvements along a segment of San Pablo Dam Road, closer to where you're at in El Sobrante. And when part of the implementing those bike ped improvements is outreach and coordinating with the local community and stakeholders, groups like that. And one of the stakeholders they would engage are the schools that line San Pablo Dam Road. I could not say though if if the county, at least for this particular project, or not even this project, but just is directly coordinating with the schools to address school traffic there. That's something else I would have to check and see. If the county have we received any complaints or any communications from the schools that there's school traffic at this particular hour, and if there's a safety issue, that's something I have to reach out to my public works and Contra Costa Health colleagues about, and then I can get back to you about that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this might more relate to your overall transportation plan. So going forward, I can tell you from experience that San Pablo Dam Road during the school year gets incredibly jammed, and there's some signal issues along that road as well. So are you able to speak a little bit more about some of the upcoming plans for that area specifically, like the complete streets? There's sidewalk gaps, and it's really used as a bypass to 80 and 24. So there is a lot of traffic pressure. I see it noted in your in your plans, and then how you're planning on working with La Miranda School District. I didn't see anything about West Contra Costa, but just wondering if you might be able to expand at all on any of those kind of plans.
Okay, and before I go to that, I just want to, to your previous question, just want to mention one other thing before I forget. So the county, we also have, especially in West County, we have like a Safe Routes to School program. So I can imagine part of that, is addressing, kids traveling to school, at the schools along San Pablo Dam Road. And that's where I'd have to check with my colleagues at Contra Costa Health there, the staff that manages the county's Safe Routes to School program. And that's where I'd check with them to see if, are those schools on San Pablo Dam Road, are those, high priority schools? Are there a lot of, incidents that take place along that corridor? So that's something I'll check with them and then follow up with you. So getting to your other question, and sorry if might have forgotten your question here, I'm trying to remember, just improvements along San Pablo Dam Road, correct? And what the county, plans or projects that the county is doing, and how they're coordinating, I guess, with the schools and other, stakeholders in the area. Again, the immediate project that comes to my mind is that San Pablo Dam Road, that bike ped project. I think can't remember the streets that I can't recall the streets that are where it's located, but yeah, they are aware though that county staff is aware that San Pablo Dam Road is a busy corridor, and not just for cars, but also have a lot of bicyclists who use San Pablo Dam Road, even on a recreational level, and that there's either no or limited shoulder or space for bicyclists on the along San Pablo Dam Road. So I think that the county is looking at least for opportunities to implement bicycle facilities on San Pablo Dam Road. As I mentioned, they're focusing, I guess this immediate project is on one segment of San Pablo Dam Road, but I'm aware that the county's active transportation plan, shows, bicycle facilities. I can imagine it would be, separated bicycle facilities on San Pablo Dam Road. So in the future, if there's an opportunity, the county, would look to implement bicycle facility, enhanced bicycle facilities to make, bicyclists safer along that corridor. And when we do that, the county, undertakes that study or project. We always make an effort to collaborate, with our neighboring jurisdictions. So in this case, it would, say down the La Miranda area, it'd be like Orinda, or, if this project, going west, we coordinate with, I'm not sure if it's Richmond or if it's, Richmond or Pinole, and just, you mentioned schools, we coordinate with them, and just all the appropriate entities when it comes to, working on planning efforts and projects along a roadway.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just a quick note, El Sobrani could use some help with the complete streets. There's a lot of sidewalk segments that are not completed. There's a section of San Pablo Dam that cannot cross the street to the other side to Olinda School.
Mm-hmm.
And then traffic going through, it's almost like a downtown area of El Sobrani. It's very fast, and it's very residential with cars parked on both sides. Residential parking feels very unsafe.
Okay.
So just a note for you. So there's, so I would say traffic for schools is quite substantial, but with West Contra Costa, they don't have any school bus program.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be something to note as well if you're reaching out to them. And that's it for me. Did anybody else have any comments or questions that arose since we went around the room? Go ahead.
I guess I have a couple comments and a suggestion for the next time you guys present this thing. So I think you guys have a very challenging, presentation and area to manage. I think just based on the questions I'm hearing from all of us, including me, I don't even know what we're talking about in terms of areas. So I think this group turns over, with some frequency, maybe starting with a map that really shows the dark areas of the cities, we're not talking about that. Everything else is what we're talking about. And then I think the other thing is somehow putting population over that, because some incorporated areas, I think, are like a city, and then there are rural roads that are completely different to cities. And I think, you know, when you come in here, the boxes are ticked, this thing is largely done. And this group is trying to understand the challenges that I think you have. How can we maybe influence something differently or provide input? I think the chair's input into, you know, some of these particular roads are things that, you know, that's what we're trying to do. But I think this conversation was very hard for me because I just don't know, I don't have a picture of what we're talking about. I live in Moraga. I know the county road that goes to Oakland. I know out Pinehurst to Canyon. I think that's your jurisdiction, but I don't know any of the other ones very well. So I think that would be helpful. I know it's every 2 years. It's hard to remember, but I think that would make the conversation probably more meaningful, people. And then don't let your compadres send you in here alone. If you need help, tell them to come to help answer your questions, because you've got a lot more staff and broken up than maybe some of the smaller cities where it's the same guy doing everything. So encourage them to come.
Okay, and just to respond, yeah, actually, I do have my colleague on Zoom here who does want to respond. But before I get to that, yeah, I joke. I'm glad you didn't ask any questions about Canyon, because yeah, Canyon.
Oh, I have lots to say about Canyon, but we won't go there.
But yeah, that was, you know, just back to a serious note, like that did come up at a previous checklist before, and I remember this question because it was kind of notable because somebody did ask, like, where is the unincorporated county? Like, what entails the unincorporated community? And then I, you know, listed off a few communities. You could say, you know, Bay Point, North Richmond, Alamo, et cetera. But I like your suggestion about, you know, including a map in future presentations to the CAC. You know, especially given that, you know, there's turnover, and in your case, you know, you're in Moraga. You're likely not going to know what's an unincorporated East County, like what Knightson or Bethel Island or Byron. So yeah, I mean, that's a good suggestion. So I'll include that in a future presentation. But yeah.
Member Ash.
Yeah, so I think you did a great job, and I think our colleague pointed out some of where our questions or lack of information were that they rest with beyond you. And I do think you complied with the checklist. I think we have, as a group, way too many outstanding questions. So if Madam Chair would entertain a motion, I would like to suggest we pass this with the caveat that staff, sorry, Emily, go back through the recording of this, write up a list of questions, and ask the county to go back and answer all of those and submit those, let's say, by August 10th to the CCTA staff. And we would pass it based on the acceptance of those questions, the receivable of those questions to staff. Matt, does that work?
So you would be approving it tonight?
We would be approving it tonight if by, let's say, August 10th, that we receive a follow-up detailed to all the missing questions, because I know that our speaker has to check with several colleagues on it.
Yep. And I've been recording the questions, so I think I have a pretty good list. So yeah, so we'll send that to county staff, have them submit back by a reasonable date, and then we can distribute that with the next mail out in September, unless.
Yeah, let me go around the room and see if that sounds like a good plan to the members of this committee.
Chair, we do have Jamar Stamps online, who is a county employee. He did have his hand raised.
Oh.
So would like, if you guys are, if you're willing, give him a chance to possibly respond if he has anything to add.
Absolutely. If he can answer some of these questions, we might be able to move along.
You can go ahead, Jamar.
Oh, hello, good evening. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I was actually gonna touch on the San Pablo Dam Road question, but we've long passed that since. And I'll say I agree with the conditional approval if it's okay with the rest of the committee members as well as CCTA staff. I think that's very reasonable, and we'll certainly get back to the rest of the committee with those questions. Before I go on, I'm sorry, I need to introduce myself. I'm Jamar Stamps. I'm a principal planner with the Conservation and Development Department Transportation Planning section. I'm Robert's colleague in the section, and I'm one of his colleagues that takes some of the share of the RTPC interaction responsibilities. And particularly in West County, I'm the staff liaison to WCTAC, the West Contra Costa Transportation Commission. So I'm a little more intimately familiar with some of the goings on out there, which is why I wanted to talk about the San Pablo Dam Road project just a little bit. But I can mention that as recently as last month, the county applied for a federal Safe Streets for All grant for a complete streets project on San Pablo Dam Road. The extent of that project is from El Portal to Tri-Lane, and that includes intersection improvements, low-stress bike facilities, Class 4 bike facilities in some stretches, and also coordination with the school districts in that project area, so that we can ensure that we have the appropriate improvements in areas that need them. So I just wanted to mention that in addition to everything else that was mentioned before. I think you were getting to make a motion on our checklist. So thank you for the time, and I'm happy to answer any other questions if there are any outstanding questions pertaining to transportation.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jamal. In the interest of time, I'm going to request that we make a motion to vote with the outstanding questions going to be answered via email. And can I get a head nod to say, are you guys ready to make a vote? Okay, very good.
So moved.
Okay, Member Ash makes a motion, and this is a motion to approve the Contra Costa County calendar years 2022 and 2023 Measure J Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. Do I have a second?
Pending the condition that the answers are submitted in writing within, Matt, I don't like reasonable time. What's a reasonable time? I like a date. 30 days?
I think your date was reasonable, the 10th of August. That would give us enough time to go have any back and forths if need be, and get it out to you guys in the next packet.
By August.
Does that seem reasonable?
That's fine with me. Yes, thank you.
I don't want to make any requirements that can't be met.
But that's fine. And that's fine, just because, that was the expectation for county staff. I know there were a number of, unanswered questions, so we were definitely going to provide a written response regardless. So it's fine if it's included as part of a motion.
So in the condition that that CCTA staff receive a written response to all the answers to the questions by August 10th.
Thank you, Member Ash. Okay. We have a
Let's
second.
make it the 11th, since the 10th is a Sunday.
Okay.
So amended.
Very good. Emily, could you please conduct a roll call?
Sorry, can we please call for public comments?
Oh, yes, I can. Are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay.
And who was the second on that motion? Oh, thank you.
Esquivel. And are there any virtual public comments?
No virtual public comments.
Okay.
All right, Member Ash?
Yay.
Member Carr?
Abstain.
Member Erickson?
Yes.
Member Esquivel?
Yes.
Member James?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Yes.
Member Saunders?
Yes.
Member Shakaran?
Yes.
Member Vedantam?
Yes.
Member Wayne?
Yes.
Vice Chair Eselsago?
Aye.
Chair Lovejoy?
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously with Member Carr abstaining and members Bankert, Miller, and Stark absent.
Thank you very much for your presentation. The next item is an informational item introduced by Matt Kelly and presented by Jordan Brooks. It is the update on the 2025 countywide transportation plan.
I realized I forgot to update Emily with our new presenter this evening. Anyway, I'll get to that in a moment. Matt Kelly, once again, with the authority. Really happy tonight to be presenting to you or bringing to you an update on the countywide transportation plan. As you may remember, we were here a few months ago talking about our blueprint, which is, which is the framework around which we are developing the countywide transportation plan. We are required as a congestion management agency and under Measure J to prepare a countywide transportation plan updated about every 5 years. So that is what we are doing now. Our board approved the blueprint and its guiding principles and goals in in May. And then we took that to a board, we took the blueprint to a board workshop and really exposed our board to some new ideas, which is what we're going to share with you tonight. This is really how we get from the blueprint framework to an actual list of projects that are included in the countywide transportation plan. And, there's a lot of policies that go around those projects, but the projects are kind of the meat of the CTP. But what Karina is going to talk to you about tonight is how we get to these projects using the goals and the principles and the guiding strategies from the blueprint. How do we get something we can actually implement and put on the ground, and something that will create mobility for residents and employees in Contra Costa County. So because we're running a little low on time, I'm going to turn it over to Karina Schneider. She is here from Ferrum Piers. They are leading our CTP work, and Ash is over in the peanut gallery taking copious notes tonight. So we're looking for your feedback on our CTP plan, our transformative visions, and our 5-star projects. So I'm going to turn it over to Karina.
Okay, can you hear me? Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Matt, for the great introduction. Let's dive right in. As Matt mentioned, the CCTA board adopted the blueprint in May, and the draft transformative visions are really kind of conceptual ways that CCTA can actually realize the blueprint. And so, kind of quick overview of the presentation this evening. I'll provide a bit of an overview of where we're at with the CTP project overall. Spend most of my time talking about the transformative visions, and then briefly end on next steps, and want to open it up to all of you to provide feedback. In terms of project timeline, sorry if the text is a little bit small, we're well over the halfway mark. We are right in the middle of drafting the business plan and the CTP itself. We've just initiated this kind of round of stakeholder and community engagement really focused on the transformative visions, and we plan to continue that into the end of September. And we're planning to really kick off public engagement this week with a pop-up in Pittsburgh this Friday, where we'll be releasing the survey and starting to get public input on the transformative visions. So following that round of engagement, we'll take all that feedback and refine the transformative visions and integrate that into the draft CTP, and ultimately aim to finalize that final CTP report in spring of next year. So a reminder that there are 3 major components to this project. The first is the 2050 blueprint, which, as Matt mentioned, includes the principles and strategies that really guide the CTP. And then the CTP itself are the projects, programs, policies that CCTA is recommending. Then below that, you can see the CCTA business plan, which really outlines CCTA's role in determining funding priorities and just how to implement effectively the 2050 blueprint and the CTP. So this is a recap of the principles included in the blueprint that the board adopted earlier this year. A reminder that these are safe travel, access for all, livable and connected neighborhoods, and growing sustainably. So these are the 4 principles that were presented to this group previously. We heard a lot of great positive feedback on these principles, both from stakeholders and members of the public. And so the board approved and decided to advance these in the CTP. So the blueprint really serves as the guideposts for the draft transformative visions that the project team has developed over the last few months here. These really are meant to serve as really tangible, specific ways that CCTA can implement the blueprint, and can also serve as the framework, as Matt mentioned, for the eventual projects, programs, and policies that will end up in the CTP. So a few additional notes on the visions. Again, these are ways that both CCTA and jurisdictional partners will implement the blueprint in a coordinated and comprehensive manner. The visions are meant to apply across the entire county, but are kind of broadly applied, broadly written, I should say, in a way that they can be applied in a really context-sensitive manner. So we're aware that there are a lot of different land use types and transportation patterns within the county, and we want to make sure that these transformative visions can be applied on a countywide context. As a next step, the CTP team will also be identifying 5-star project examples that can kind of illustrate what these transformative visions might look like on the ground. And so we've started initiating conversations with jurisdiction staff on what these project examples could look like. So here are the transformative visions. There are 4 of them, and we're going to go over each of them in turn. These include providing reliable freeway travel, building a complete reliable transit network, creating safe, comfortable streets, and supporting vibrant communities. So starting with providing reliable freeway travel, this vision is really focused on improving freeway reliability by reducing backups from crashes and inefficient use of travel lanes. So each vision has several components. This one has 4, so I'll go over these first 2 here. The first is rapid recovery freeways. So this is really investing in technology and real-time monitoring systems so that crashes can be identified quickly and also addressed and cleared quickly so we can get freeway travel back on track. The next one here is smart lane management. So this is using flexible lane configurations, like flexible HOV lanes or flexible bus kind of transit-only lanes, and kind of adaptively allocate lanes based on time of day kind of travel demands on the corridor. Next is build out the network. So this consists of building out the express lane network across the county, but also includes other targeted improvements, kind of like strategic targeted widenings of kind of key bottlenecks throughout the county as well, to again improve reliability and connectivity. And finally, we have future-ready corridors. So this is modernizing key corridors with sensors, communication systems that are able to integrate connected and autonomous vehicles when they come fully online, and so that our CCTA's freeways are ready to go once those vehicles are on city streets. All right, moving to the next transformative vision, building a complete, reliable transit network. This is focused on expanding fast, reliable, seamless transit across the county, connecting people to destinations with services they can count on. The first component here is a show up and go transit network. This is really focused on all day, high frequency, really high quality service on kind of primary main corridors throughout the counties where we'd expect to see higher demand for transit. And then the next one here is transit for all neighborhoods. This is in areas where it would be more difficult to see kind of high levels of demand. It might not make sense to provide high frequency transit service, but where feeder bus or flexible transit options like on-demand shuttle services could be provided to make sure that there is transit coverage across the county. Next, we have regional transit connections. So this is investing in regional rail, ferry, and express bus transit connections, largely focused on expanding economic opportunities, really making sure that those commute connections to areas outside of the county are supported. And next, we have accessible and seamless transit. This is to build out a mobility hubs network. Mobility hubs are really kind of high quality transfer points between different transit services. So you can see in this kind of graphic here, there's a lot of different types of transportation modes served in one spot. You can have buses, bike share, rail. It can also provide amenities like EV charging or even pop-up coffee shops to kind of make that transfer experience as enjoyable as possible. And the last one in this vision is Contra Costa Takes Flight. So this is really positioning the county as a leader in regional air mobility. And that can look like testing zones, piloting these types of services. Could also consist of identifying locations for kind of helipad, essentially locations where those types of services would be, land and be provided throughout the county. The next vision is creating safe, comfortable streets. This is redesigning streets and corridors to put people first, making everyday travel safer, easier, and more comfortable. So the first one we have here is Easy Morning Safe Streets. This includes creating school streets, where we're slowing down vehicles, really focusing on students and youth safety and mobility, and especially along school routes. This also includes encouraging school bus programs, really expanding those programs to provide additional options for kids to get to school, but also make it easier for parents and commuters who are currently either driving the kids to school or competing on roads with parents that are driving their kids to school. The next is safe and smooth traffic flow. This consists of using technology like smart signals, coordinated signals to smooth traffic flow. This also includes preventative maintenance, repaving to actually make that full travel experience as smooth as possible. Next, we have livable streets for daily life. This is about designing streets to really align with the purpose of a given street. So some streets, for example, serve as more of a place or a destination where you're going to see lots of folks walking around, people taking transit, particularly as example in downtown areas. So really making sure that the street is designed for that type of movement and for the safety and comfort for all users that we expect to be using that street. Also, while at the same time providing flexibility to respond to emergency situations and evacuations. Next, we have a countywide low-stress bikeway network. This is about creating a continuous and connected all ages and ability network, supporting the safe, comfortable travel for people walking and biking across the county. And the last vision we have here is supporting vibrant communities. This is about revitalizing public spaces and community hubs to create lively, well-connected places where people can live, gather, and get around without depending on a car. And the first one we have here is community-centered streets. So this is about creating neighborhood spaces, activating quiet streets and main streets with car-free parklets, plazas. We can also use it for events like farmers markets and kind of the example shown in the photo here, which helps support community building, but can also help support the local economy. Next, we have Revive and Thrive. This one's about revitalizing aging retail centers into really vibrant mixed-use neighborhood centers where people can easily get to kind of their daily destinations just within a short walking or biking trip. So you're reducing kind of demand on the road, essentially. Next is trail-oriented development. That's really focused on major trails within urbanized areas. So supporting compact mixed-use development in those areas specifically, both to improve access to trails in the county, but also make trails a destination in and of themselves within the county as well. And then the next one here is, and this is the last one, is reimagine the shoreline. And we recognize that there are a lot of different kind of priorities for the shoreline throughout the county. So in some cases, the focus might be on really making sure there's great recreation and mobility options. In other places, the focus should really be more on economic development. So this particular component is really making sure that we're just maximizing the potential of the shoreline throughout the county. All right, a note on next steps. As I mentioned earlier, this is kind of the beginning of our round of engagement on these transformative visions. And we're going to be collecting feedback all throughout the summer, aiming to wrap it up by the end of September, and then we'll refine the transformative visions based on the feedback that we receive. We're continuing to identify 5-star project examples that kind of illustrate the types of projects that CCTA would like to see in relation to the transformative visions. And then later in November, we'll take the refined transformative visions to the board and kind of conduct a board workshop where we'll finalize the transformative visions and pull them into the draft CTP. And with that, I would love to open it up for discussion, we have some prompts here for your feedback. The first is if there are any transformative visions that you most want to see because they most address the needs of your community. If there are any transformative visions or any of their components that raise concerns for you and should be deprioritized. And if there's anything missing from this list, please, we would love to know about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Karina. We will start this time with our virtual committee members. Member Shakiran, do you have any comments or questions, discussion items?
Not at this time, but give me a few minutes and come back to me.
Okay, I put you on the spot. Member Erickson?
Yes, I do. I just would really like to see how a real example. So, you know, the last meetings, we've been having a number of cities coming and presenting their plans to get their funding. And let's take Antioch as an example. So in this vision that you're looking at, the city of the city of Oakley. Oakley is an example. So the city of Oakley came to us and basically saying they're building out almost exclusively single-family housing at about $700,000 per person with very little connected streets, complete streets. They don't even plan for it. They say they don't have the funding to even have a bike and pedestrian thing. Their largest employer is one of their largest employers is the new Amazon warehouse that they have there. None of the people that work at the Amazon warehouse can afford to buy those $700,000 homes that they're building. And so they'll be having to drive long distances somewhere else, probably out in Stockton, Lodi, et cetera, to even get to Oakley. In this vision, what do you see? It seems like the housing component is clearly kind of missing. And how do you see, like, if somebody working at the Amazon warehouse wanted to get to Oakley and is living over 60 miles away to be able to afford to get there, what in your vision do you see is going to allow that to happen?
Yeah, thanks for providing that example. I think there are kind of two responses I can provide to that. One is that in the more kind of land use focused transformative vision, we're trying to find this balance of, you know, acknowledging that CCTA doesn't have control over land use. And so, but also acknowledging that land use decisions can have a profound impact on the transportation system and how people get around. And so the land use kind of visions in particular are going to require CCTA to coordinate and interact very closely with jurisdictions on how exactly kind of complete streets and kind of good transportation planning practices can be combined with good land use planning. And so there's just going to have to be coordination there. But of course, at the end of the day, jurisdictions have control over their land use. So that's kind of the land use piece. And I think for the other question you had about how, you know, we're going to help folks get, you know, longer distances if they can't afford to live right next to where they work. Some of our transit components in the transit transformative vision are focused on kind of regional connectivity through a number of different transit options like rail, ferry, express bus. And so trying to cover as many bases as possible with these transformative visions.
Thanks, Karina. And I just wanted to add on, what was I going to add on to that? The Oakley example. Lost my train of thought. So in terms of land use, you know, as Karina mentioned, CCTA is not directly in the land use business. However, we do have our growth management program, which does provide some ties to local land use. And because there is the return to source, the LSM funds that are basically a carrot, you know, for the communities to be compliant with the growth management program, which is unique in the state of California. There are no other areas that have all these ties to, you know, the urban limit line and housing and things like that, where they're, in order to get, you know, funds returned to them from the measure. We think that moving forward with these new policies, there is opportunities to expand the requirements of the growth management program, whether it's continued with the carrot or adding a stick to really get the jurisdictions to play ball when it comes to thinking about land use and, you know, how you're planning your transportation facilities and where you're focusing your growth. CCTA wants to support good growth, you know, growth around transit, growth around these transportation facilities like trails. We see the growth management program and the checklist as the mechanism for encouraging that. So you may not see major changes in that till we have a new sales tax, you know, an expenditure plan and a new sales tax measure, but that's kind of where, that is where all this is leading. It doesn't happen through the CTP, but the CTP identifies these policies that are then implemented through a new sales tax expenditure plan. So I know I got a little beyond what we're talking about here, but ultimately the GMP is the forum for making sure jurisdictions are doing the right thing.
Member Erickson, did you have any other further questions, comments?
Just thank you. I know there's a lot to digest, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, we will start over here. If you guys are ready, Member Vedantan.
Thank you for the presentation. It's a much broader version of the bigger picture. Getting to the nuts and bolts of it, just a quick question. I know there's a vision about the safety. Maybe it goes to the local law enforcement, but there's a lot of homeless shelters side of the road, even at these hubs, the transit hubs. I don't know if there's something that the county has looked into it, because it's definitely a safety concern, right? Whether it's side of the street or at a bus
Personal
station.
safety.
Yeah, blocking the sidewalk.
Yeah, so I don't know if that is accounted or looked into part of this bigger vision, because it looks like it's growing issue.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It's not currently integrated into these transformative visions. And I think, as you noted, like, there is kind of an enforcement angle there that is beyond CCTA's jurisdiction. There might be something that could be explored programmatically. I'm not sure if Matt has had conversations about that internally with CCTA folks, but something we could look into.
Yeah, you know, we're looking to the local jurisdictions to provide us with these 5-star projects. Like, with all this in mind, what projects do you have locally that you need, you know, that you need to implement these visions? And so we are looking for project ideas from the local jurisdictions. So hopefully, and they're the ones that have to deal with the issues you mentioned. So hopefully when they're proposing projects to us, they're keeping that in mind, and yeah, maybe there can be some programmatic category. We're expecting a lot of the smaller projects that come out of this to be part of programmatic categories. You know, there will be some large projects and then some, you know, like pet improvements, and all the small projects would be under kind of an umbrella, and perhaps there can also be a personal safety component to that, a programmatic category, or when we're building that into all of our kind of streetscape projects, something like that, that there's a, you know, funding for however the jurisdiction thinks they can address those issues the best. I don't want to come up with solutions myself.
Great, thank you. First of all, it's really exciting to see all these like innovative ideas in the plan, so thank you for presenting on them. One thing I was thinking about, I've heard a lot of people talk about how Contra Costa is very much a bedroom community, so people live here, but then they work in other counties or have to travel far distances. So one thing I was thinking about as you went through the different initiatives is just some idea of having more like Contra Costa residents, I guess, be able to work on these projects. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to connect to the local community colleges or, trade programs and things like that. And I think that would really help also like reduce VMTs to some degree, but also provide more opportunities for people, closer to where they live. And I think that also speaks to Member Erickson's point about, creating opportunities for people. And then in terms of a question for you, do you have an example of a mobility hub either in Contra Costa or regionally?
I don't know if I have a good example off the top of my head. Pointing at someone.
Well, no, across the street is Barton.
Oh, there's a BART station, yes.
No, but there's also buses.
Right, and I think at a lot of BART stations, there's going to be like coordination with other transit agencies. But I think when we think of a mobility hub, it's something like one step beyond that. We can have, kind of screens that people can use with real-time information about when the next bus, when the next train is going to be there, like how to connect to, what's the best option to connect to your destination. If you have a bike share station available, is it going to be faster just and cheaper to take bike share or to take the bus? And it kind of can be a destination in and of itself. And so there could be kind of retail or kind of commercial opportunities at that mobility hub as well. And so it's really meant to be a place where people can easily transfer, easily get around with a lot of different kind of transit mobility options, and can also provide some amenities of just like kind of a nice place to hang out and like actually experience a nice seamless kind of transfer from one mode to the next.
Just so you know, CCTA is currently designing 3 different mobility hubs as part of our 680 project. If you remember when we came to you last year on the 680 northbound express lane, some of the VMT mitigations for that were construction of mobility hubs. So we're working on one at the Martinez Amtrak station, one at the Walnut Creek BART station, and one at Bishop Ranch. So you will see designs for those and construction in the next couple of years. We're also, actually tomorrow, there's a siting exercise for a new hub somewhere in East County. They're looking at sites in both Pittsburgh and Antioch, and so some of our staff will be going on that tour tomorrow to kind of select a preferred location in East County. So you're going to start to see, it's a new idea, it's a new concept. So you're going to start to see what they may look like in different locations. And they will look different depending on if they're at a BART station or in kind of a neighborhood or a shopping center. Yeah, we've got different kind of templates for them. So great. It's exciting.
And then my last question was regarding, you talked about like revitalizing aging retail centers. And I was curious, like, would that apply to vacant retail centers as well? Just because we know like brick and mortar retail has struggled a lot these days. So I was curious if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, I think it could be broadly applied to places that are aging kind of mall types of places or aging strip malls. I think it kind of depends on kind of where in the county we're looking at and kind of where the opportunities are to really invest in kind of mixed use development, housing, retail, and really, and if there are places where people are really going to be interested to live in that place and use it and get around there, then I think we're open to many different types of opportunities there. Yeah.
Great. And also, you had asked a question about annexation. So I learned that the Sun Valley Mall territory, that used to belong, I think, to the city of Pleasant Hill, but then Concord, I think, annexed that land, or Pleasant Hill sold it to them. So that's how the Sun Valley Mall actually, it's on Pleasant Hill land, but now it's in the boundaries of Concord. So that's one example. And those are all my questions.
So with that, I'll follow up on your question. I think it's more of probably the private owners of the commercial to work with the cities to make it a vibrant. So I think your plan will fit in with that goal because we want to encourage development and we want to integrate everything. So I was just thinking that so maybe the plan, so I think where I was going is the plan should encourage private investment and make it possible so that there is a return on investment so that we can grow that commercial center. So maybe the plan's missing that goal, but just,
Yeah, I think it's maybe just left unsaid, I guess I should say. Yeah, we definitely need to coordinate with private developers to make that a reality. Yeah.
Right. And then I did want to second Member Vedanta's comment. Thank you for mentioning that. And I see the vision. I love the presentation. I see my favorite part was the trails and the walkways of looking at a beautiful nature. So I love it. And so your question was, what is missing? Motorcycles. So I just got my Class M license, and so I mean, we do fit in the plan. Nobody here is gonna get a motorcycle, but if we all got a motorcycle and we don't have cars, then we probably won't get we don't have that cage to protect us. So it's a safety concern.
Yeah.
And if we, it's a big risk to get on a motorcycle. So just consider that I'm going to be driving a motorcycle one day. So,
We'll keep that in mind.
And I would encourage everyone. And then, can we go to the screenshot of, I think, something about the buses and protected bike lanes. So one of the challenges, maybe prior to, yes, that one. So one of the challenges and the concerns, and I think 2 projects are already suffering from this. I don't know if you recall in San Francisco, some street, the Commerce was really upset because parking was removed for bikes, and I'm a biker. But the challenges with that vision is that the concern is that, do you have to remove parking in order to protect bikes?
Not necessarily. It depends on the kind of the width of the street. And we typically, when we're designing a street, we have to take a look at a lot of the data about that street. So the street width, how many cars are typically travel on that street every day, kind of what the land use looks like along that street. So there's a lot of considerations that are taken into account in terms of the final design. But if there's enough width for both parking and a bike lane, or a protected bike lane, then typically designers would try to find a way to fit it all in.
Yeah. In my community, we're suffering, and it actually became a drama in El Cerrito, because we did fund, a CCTA funded a project in the community, and it's funds are hard to come by. And everybody thought it's great to put in a protected bike lane, but it did create a lot of friction. And so I think one of the challenges is that you plan out, you fund it, you prioritize it, and then when you lose parking, I mean, there's still that old culture, but it's still important and it affects the community. So just, that's the only problem I see with how do we make everyone happy? And that's the challenge. Thank you.
That's a very hard task. And sometimes, jurisdictions have to grapple with trade-offs, and sometimes there are some voices that might lose out,
If we planned it ahead of time, we want to make everyone happy. So maybe
that's the ideal. That's the ideal for sure.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for the presentation. In terms of feedback to you, a couple things. One is just kind of FYI. I usually, and it sort of tripped me up at first, I usually think there's a vision, and then from the vision, plans get implemented, blueprints. So that it's a blueprint that then spawns visions is kind of backwards to my thinking. Others may get tripped up by that sort of nomenclature because it usually starts with the vision and then plans follow. So just keep that in mind. There may be, audiences that may struggle with that nomenclature. In terms of lenses, the topic I haven't heard and I think is an important one. The San Francisco Bay Area is the 3rd oldest population, 3rd oldest metro area in the country. Contra Costa, I just looked it up. Some of the wine country counties are even older, but Contra Costa average age is over 40. So baby boomers are anywhere from 61 to 79. The peak of the baby boom is approaching 70. So any vision that we have has to contemplate what are the needs of a society of that age. They're not all going to bike. They're not all going to drive. I've got a brother-in-law who lives with us with dementia. He can't walk 300 feet, much less bike or drive. So when he goes to his daycare, we have to drive him there. at this point. Maybe someday there's an on-demand shuttle that'll pick him up and take him to where he needs to go if he's still in this world at that time. So I just think it's an important lens as you look at everything you're considering. Consider the aging of the population and the needs of that aging population. Many of them are not going to be able to get on a bike. Many of them are not going to be able to drive. Autonomous vehicles offer a lot of promise in that space, but we're not there yet. So think about that in-game, think about that transition from where we are today in a population that's rapidly aging in a part of the country that has some of the oldest average age demographics that are approaching some of the places in Florida that we think of as maybe being magnets for retirees. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you again for your presentation. Just a couple questions. What is new or different about this plan from the previous plan?
I might have to throw that one to Matt Kelly, but I think we are trying to think holistically. We're kind of taking a step back and acknowledging there's a lot of different, again, like land uses context across the county and what's really going to be effective to get folks around the county. I know that's, likely also true for the previous CTP, but I think with the upcoming transportation expenditure plan, I think it's of utmost importance in the CTP to really figure out what's going to bring everyone together, and what's going to get folks excited about the future of transportation in this county. And so that's really kind of the driving vision, I would say, of this plan. Maybe Matt can provide more of the specifics there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just in general, having this blueprint, which, like I said earlier, provides this framework for us to work through. Our previous plan, not to say it focused entirely on vehicles and highways, but we were still looking for kind of Caldecott Tunnel Part 2, these really large marquee projects that we could design a plan around. And, we're finding that those just don't exist anymore. So I think we're looking at this plan with, like I said, through that programmatic lens, where we would have lots of small projects under, a programmatic umbrella. But we are still interested in finding marquee projects, and that's what the transformative visions is hopefully going to get us. But we think those projects are going to look different than previous marquee projects.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like to me when you guys are presenting this to go out for another measure, sales tax measure, that it might be really good to have very specific local projects to pitch to the people, to the voters in that specific area. A question on the freeway portion. In Boston, they have a smart lane zipper that really helps change the flow from, like, if you're commuting into the city in the morning, they will zipper the divider lane out so you have an extra lane. Has anything like that been looked at in the countywide level or CCTA?
That's been discussed under component B here, smart lane management, kind of adaptively allocating lanes. So I think we're initially exploring kind of what contraflow lanes might look like in the county, and I think there have been recent discussions actually that's been a part of.
We've actually been discussing it this week, and we're actually trying to, because we want to bring ideas like that forward, we're actually trying to figure out a freeway in the county where that would be possible, just because we've done a lot with our medians, either BART historically, or recently express lanes, like on 680. And, we don't want to make, the voters think we're going to put something in and then immediately tear it out and put something else in. So we're looking for maybe an opportunity to do that where we haven't already improved, the median for some other facility.
Very good. That's all I have. Member Ethel, you go.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I guess this is more for me trying to understand, and this kind of touches on Member Erickson, Member Carr, and some of the other members' questions. I'm just curious to understand your approach to balancing long-term transportation infrastructure investments with the near-term affordability and accessibility needs.
When you say near-term affordability, just in terms of transportation costs for users?
Transportation, I know this is more transportation, but also maybe housing.
Housing, okay.
Or any type of affordability, accessibility needs. Just kind of balancing it out, or how you're all planning to balance it out with the future investments.
Yeah, I would say this CTP is a long-range planning document, and so the focus is on kind of big picture, what CCTA aiming to accomplish the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so I think there are going to be issues that come up alongside that, along with housing and et cetera, and I think there was a mention of kind of addressing homelessness is finalized, and there's like a set list of projects. I think there'll be a kind of a tangible list of things that can be done in the near term based off of that, assuming that funding is found, in a timely manner. And so I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
it gives me a picture.
Yeah.
And I think one of the main tenets of the plan is equity and making sure that we are providing benefits to folks that are already, struggling with housing and housing costs and things like that. So we've identified parts of the county where that burden is much higher, the higher, percentage of costs going towards housing and transportation, and really making sure those areas that maybe have been underinvested in terms of transportation over the years get better access to the transportation investments and infrastructure. So that's one way we're kind of looking through that economic lens.
Okay, thank you. Next question is more on, I guess, your thoughts on funding constraints or inflation impact on the project.
Yes, there's definitely funding constraints, absolutely. And I think, as we mentioned previously, kind of the next stage after finalizing the CTP is starting to work on the transportation expenditure plan for a future ballot measure. And so there's gonna be a lot of great work that's done and built up and engagement feedback that we're going to be using to really start up that TEP process, but really continue to have conversations and do polling with folks throughout the county to understand what the needs and priorities are, to hopefully be successful in the next ballot measure. And so hopefully there will be an additional pot of funding that CCTA can pull from to actually continue to implement and realize the visions that would be finalized in this plan.
Okay. And lastly, outside of funding, what are some of the major challenges that you anticipate?
I think, as we mentioned previously, there is just a lot of different contexts throughout the county. And so I think trying to find that balance of kind of encouraging the type of growth and transportation system that CCTA wants to see, while also kind of coordinating that with what local jurisdictions see as their priorities. So I think that could be, a challenge in terms of implementation. Yeah.
I just want to expand about that because that is a very good question and something we didn't hit on earlier. In terms of prioritizing the funding and making sure we are getting good projects rising to the top, we do intend this plan and a future expenditure plan to be performance-based. So we'll be looking at data, qualitative metrics, and make sure the projects that are getting funding with the limited amount of funding, there's going to be, maybe $20 billion worth of projects identified, but only $3 billion in funding from a new measure. So, one, we can leverage that $3 billion to make it, closer to 9 or 10 billion, but without having that 20 billion, how are we going to fund the projects that are really going to have the most impact on the most people, and on the county and the metrics we care about, like pollution and VMT and economic vitality and things like that.
Well, of the 490 pages I got to read, this was the most interesting.
Oh, good.
So I guess just a kind of a comment. I don't quite understand how the five-star examples is going to work in terms of will they be listed in this final document or what is that? Because I do think, just listening to everybody, I agree 100% that the projects that are in there are what are going to motivate people or get them excited about it. So will we get a chance to see some of those projects, or how do they get implemented into this plan?
Yeah, so we're currently coordinating with jurisdictions who are kind of nominating projects to kind of relate to each transformative vision. So CCTA and the project team will be reviewing those. And so the plan is to integrate those five-star project examples into the plan itself. And there could be kind of like cool call-out pages to really like highlight, what types of benefits that particular project would be providing and how it supports the goals and strategies listed in the blueprint. So there'll be one more round of engagement near the end of this process to look at the draft plan. So the five-star example projects would be included there.
Okay. And then one thing that I think it's missing, or at least specifically, so all of our roads are for all kinds of users, from cars to pedestrians and whatnot. And I think overall, people are getting incredibly lax about how they treat themselves. Now, there's laws that say a pedestrian has rights over a car or whatnot, but at the end of the day, a pedestrian, on a dark road, walking into a road isn't going to help, a driver or anything. So I think there's an education. I think it's easier in the schools of how to educate kids to operate their bikes or how to cross the street and stuff. But the number of red light runners I see, nobody tells you that they're changing lanes. They're just veering over. People in the dark street walking along in the middle of the road, and I can barely see them. I mean, there's some education that I don't know how the county can do it. It's sort of a national problem, not a county problem, but somehow incorporating some of that, I think, will help with safety, because I think there's a lot of bad behaviors, across the whole gamut, from cars to people. So anyway, I don't know how you solve it, but it's a problem.
Yeah, I will note for C, livable streets here, part of CCTA's way to address behavior is through redesign. And so, improving streetlights will, increase, the visibility for people if they do happen to be in the road. And, creating or, implementing countermeasures and engineering solutions that'll slow down vehicles near schools, for example. So there's a lot of different ways that streets can be changed in order to actually affect behavior. And so that is a primary way that CCT can really affect that, but definitely hear you on the educational piece as well.
Thanks for the presentation. I just want to add to Member Sanders' comment there. I thought that one thing maybe that could be emphasized a little more regarding safety is maybe enforcement or enforcement technologies that could be incorporated into the vision, because I know there's just an underlying technology, vision for CCTA. Yeah, some cameras, some speed enforcement, those kinds of things that maybe are not specifically mentioned in here would be helpful.
Should we be looking into automated enforcement?
Yes, I do.
I mean, things like occupancy on the freeways, and those are things that are being looked at today. So I'm interested if that's something you guys would be interested in.
Yeah, I think, well, I've mentioned my perspective on SR4 and the HOV lane there, and there's definitely a lot of violators there. And I just got my EV sticker, so now I could jump in that lane, but I don't think I'm actually helping, without having an HOV person with me. But yes, enforcement of occupancy, speed enforcement on local roadways and residential areas around schools, because I agree that people are just, not really considerate of other people at this point. So that would be one note just on the general input. I did have some questions also. So Matt, you mentioned the performance-based business plan. So could you explain if that's sort of, if projects are going to apply for funding and be modeling their expected performance to be able to access funds, or is this an after-the-fact performance-based assessment? What do you guys think?
It would be performance-based to receive the initial funds.
Okay, so it's a modeling effort,
Yeah,
not
but-
necessarily an after, before and after.
Right, but we would also be doing ongoing monitoring to make sure that the benefits that were promised are actually occurring. So yeah, so we plan on being, incorporating that performance, those performance metrics into all aspects of project planning and ongoing monitoring.
Okay, yeah, I think that's important for taxpayers, I think, if they're gonna be voting on a measure and funding specific projects, because the landscape continuously changes and we build these plans for 20 years and pick projects for 20 years, but things change over 20 years.
That's definitely something we learned with Measure J, that, 20 years down the road, the projects just don't, they don't maybe have the same cachet or just they're beyond their, they've passed their prime. So yeah, keeping a new measure future ready and being able to, kind of on the fly, be able to evaluate these projects based on their impact at that point in time. I think that's very important.
The other question I guess I had on, because what I'm understanding is the CTP is then going, typically will feed into the regional transportation plan, like MTC's plan, right? And so will the CTP then be fiscally constrained based on, current funding pots, or because it's reliant on a future measure, is there a gap that we're gonna have in the CTP?
Yeah, the CTP, so it is going to be fiscally unconstrained. However, you are correct, it does, a subset of that does feed into the RTP. So we go through an exercise with MTC where we, submit a list of projects to the RTP, but that will be generated through the CTP effort. When it comes to, sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Well, I guess the second part I didn't ask yet.
Oh.
It was mostly what happens if we don't pass a measure? What
Oh.
happens to the rest of the projects in the plan? How do we pivot the plan to the reality of no extra sales tax measure?
So, we think the policies in the plan, will still be applicable without a sales tax measure or until there's a sales tax measure. However, the enforcement, the carrot and the stick side of things, probably there would be no changes to the growth management program requirements until that would be part of a new sales tax measure, just like Measure J. So we would need that new measure to make all of those new, visions and components a requirement. In the meantime, we're treating these new policies as kind of a guidance for the cities. Like, for the cities that are interested in moving forward, hey, we've got all the resources there for you, all the guidance, but right now it's optional.
Right.
When there's a new sales tax measure, you can bet that a lot of these things will be part of the growth management program and become required in order to receive the return to source funds.
Okay, all right, that's good. That's great to hear. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, most of my questions have been asked, but yeah, I guess the values, livable streets for daily life. I know Martinez, very kind of old community, and a lot of the streets that were outside of the original Martinez, yeah, they're kind of dangerous, too wide radius. The streets that come together and you don't know who it is to turn. Do you guys get specific on doing anything always remember this walkability study that the city of San Francisco did, and they had metrics of graffiti and public transit, and they go around. I know it's probably something you couldn't do for all of Contra Costa, but did you kind of look at things like, did some kind of study where looking at those kind of things, public transit, what areas of Contra Costa County are underserved? You know, when it comes to public transit, it's always the first and last mile that's the hardest, you know, to get to the bus stop, or once you get to the bus stop, to get to work, you know, that last mile or two that you have to get to. Did you look at things like that?
For this particular vision.
Yeah, or is that too specific for?
Yeah, I would say we're not getting into the details as part of these visions. It's really just making, you know, we have developed a framework that will be integrated into our policies, the Livable Streets proposal, and that might have been presented to this committee previously, but essentially we have developed a framework identifying which streets throughout the county are really more for movement or more for place or somewhere in between. And so we are working on developing kind of design guidelines for each type of street. And so that kind of policy could be applied to this transformative vision. But it is a little bit broader, maybe a little bit more high level than what you're thinking. But these guidelines can be applied, you know, at the jurisdiction level to actually implement a design that helps support, you know, all the roadway users for that particular corridor.
All right, I have about 82 minutes worth of questions to keep us all entertained. First, Mr. Carr, I gotta know, what are the other two older metro areas? Because it's driving me crazy.
I know Sarasota County is the oldest, but
Okay.
Outside of that, I'm not sure who number 2 was.
Okay, just thanks. And then going back to the CCT, to the measure, wouldn't the CCTA funding without a new measure run out? And in a sense, this agency would go away in the next I think 2032, was it?
2034?
2034. And so it's not only to do all these projects, but to keep our friends and everybody else employed and existing things maintained. There does need to be a new measure, which also competes against a regional measure that will possibly be on the ballot in 2026. I did want to ask about the mobility hubs. It's my understanding that San Ramon vision includes the aerial possibility of flight. Are those mobility hubs including looking at aerial transit?
San Ramon one specifically?
Any of them?
I'm not aware of, for San Ramon, I'm not aware of any specifics, but sure, why not? You know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that could definitely be explored.
And the report out of LA is coming up for the 2028 Olympics is a minimum of 8, but their goal is 18% of transit 15 miles or less will be done via aerial transit. 15 miles or more. So expanding the hotels, 15 to 50 miles via aerial transit. In a sense, micro, they're calling it transit. So not to airports, but in a local jurisdiction. That is a significant number of travel and a big goal. And they actually do have infrastructure. Most people don't realize in LA that almost every significant sized building has a heliport already, which is unique to that city and county. But I just thought I'd throw that out there that I love how you guys are future proofing, but I would look into those mobility hubs as you're designing them to really future proof, because I don't think it's that far away anymore. The next thing I was going to ask is, I think CCTA has been learning about actively managed highways. I know you talk about the autonomous vehicle future proofing. But I think there's some significant benefits of actively managing highways. How would that work? What could be the transit savings on that? How does that work with Caltrans? Anything you could?
Yeah, let me actually go back to that section. So I think smart land management is kind of one of the key opportunities for CCTA to invest in technology today. So looking at what times of day there's high demand and implementing kind of flexible either transit lanes or HOV lanes. And so, that's a near-term opportunity for CCTA to explore. Same with rapid recovery freeways, using kind of high-tech kind of monitoring and communication systems to identify when crashes happen on the freeway and to very quickly have a response to clear those crashes. So I think like A, B, and C, yeah, building out the express lane network and other improvements are all kind of near-term opportunities that CCTA can invest in freeway network in advance of connected and automated vehicle future.
Are there any numbers of what that actively managed highway can do? I've heard somebody say 15 to 20%. Is that what you guys are seeing? What are other cities who are active or other countries actively managing things looking at?
I think I'd have to get back to you on you're saying percentage of like how much?
Like if you take a 4-lane highway and you actively manage that, it's the equivalent of a 5th lane, which would be 20%. Yeah.
Like a capacity address or something. Okay.
Yeah. Because I think it could be significant. We're talking about.
So right now, freeway lanes hold an average of 2,000 vehicles per hour each lane. We think that a fully autonomous lane could handle 3,000 vehicles per hour. Fully autonomous, every car automated. So that's a long ways away till every car is automated. But
right.
You can kind of see the range.
But you're talking adding 50% capacity, which has a major impact.
Yeah. That's potential.
Okay.
We don't, it hasn't been deployed anywhere yet, but that's what the experts are thinking.
Is there stats of actively managing highways now, like with current technologies and stuff that other places are doing?
I don't have numbers off the top of my head, but we can certainly look into, if cities have done other studies of advanced management of lanes and how that's improving flow or capacity.
And we're actively working with Vic, I forget what they're called. It's Victoria, Australia, the transportation agency for Vic Roads. That's what they're called. They do active management of their lanes, and so we can get some information from there.
Yeah, it sounds like you have that in here, but I think that could be a solution because 4 and 680, there's a limit to what you've done, what you can do. And I know as you're building that infrastructure out for the Innovate 680 project, I would just think that could be a next step. And I know that's difficult when the roads don't end at Contra Costa County borders and there's Caltrans role and CHP, but that appears to me as a big possible win to help with our highways, is this active management. So thanks.
Thank you. And I just wanted to return to Member Shakirin online. Did you have any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you. I had a quick question regarding the process for preparing the transportation plan. What is the involvement of the different jurisdictions, the 19 cities within the county in terms of, so that this is a seamless process? So if there are any overlaps, especially within the transportation network, some streets and arterials go through multiple jurisdictions. So has there been an outreach to the cities, jurisdictions, and have they given input, or will they be giving input in this process?
Yes, absolutely. Just for this round of engagement, we've met with the planning directors for all the jurisdictions in the county. We've also presented to the technical coordinating committee, which includes staff, representatives from each of the jurisdictions. So we're integrating opportunities to connect with each of those jurisdictions and make sure we're getting feedback from them. I think a good example of that is the 5-star project examples. We really want them to be nominating what types of projects they think are going to align best with these transformative visions. And so, we're working closely with them on this.
And we'll be going to the city manager, the Public Managers Association as well later this year to get them on board.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
And is there any written public comment, Emily?
We do not have any written or virtual public comments. Oh,
Thank
Member
you.
Esquivel has a...
I'm sorry, I just have 2 burning questions. That was a great comment about actively managed right now. You can do it with paint stripe. We can test it out with paint striping, but I did forget I forgot one question. Policy and politics. I believe that Contra Costa County benefited from work from home. Like, we're talking about increasing capacity, but if we all when we worked from home, there was less congestion on the freeways. And it doesn't have to do with transportation, but a comment about supporting work from home policies could help with that, and the politics. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, you have to support that.
Thank you, Member Esquivel. Is there any other comments from the committee or questions? Okay, very good. So that concludes our regular agenda items. The next item on the agenda is member and staff comments. Do any committee members or staff have anything they would like to share? We don't have to vote on that item? No, that was informational.
We took your comments, though.
Member Ash.
I know it's getting late. So at Walnut Creek Transportation Commission, we heard about a county project that would be pretty much right here at Treat, leading into the BART station and over the 680 overpass, that they are talking about adding in a series of bike lanes and changing the lanes there. And we have that publicly available, and maybe Emily, we can get that from Matt at Walnut Creek and add it to the follow-up items, because I know particularly our bikers would like that. It would create an accessible route, and it was identified in 2016 for $3 million, and it looks like it could be done by 2030 at $8 million, and that seems to be moving forward. Why does it cost so much money, and why is it taking 14 years? I don't know, but it would create a safe passage between North Main over 680 to the BART here, and that's unincorporated county and Walnut Creek working together.
Thank you, Member Ash. Anybody else? Okay. So, are there any virtual comments?
We have no public comment, written or virtual.
Okay. And Member Shakirin, Member Erickson, no comments from you guys? Okay.
No comment.
I'm sorry, I wanted to make a very brief comment. Last month, there was a small Move On conference that had local transportation expert kind of do panels, and Matt was actually there, and that was interesting. And one of the things that was brought up was that, right now that 30% of the people in Contra Costa County don't have the ability to use cars. And I think that that's like the micro, having to look at the full range of an aging population, I think is very important as we do transportation going forward.
Thank you, Member Erickson. Do we have any virtual public speakers, Emily?
We have no virtual public comments.
Okay, thought I had to ask. So the next item is correspondence and communications, which we have none. And then there are future agenda items. If there are any topics that the members would like to agendize on the future agenda, please raise your hand. Member Saunders?
Off of your list, Matt, I think it was on there. I think the sales tax forecast and just kind of understanding how that's changing or might change, particularly as retail sales and online, I mean, it's just a lot of change. I think that would be interesting to kind of have perspective of historical and what might happen in the future. So
Definitely, our CFO can come and provide that presentation.
Any other items? Okay, thanks for hanging with us. And this concludes our meeting at 8:49 p.m., our longest session ever.